Hey everybody, this is Web Dev with Seb, and today I'm going to wrap up my series on the Odin Project. In the last video, I gave my honest thoughts on the first half of the course as a senior developer, and today we're going to be covering the second half. In this video, we're going to compare the Rails and full stack JS paths. We're going to assess the two paths based on 4 criteria: databases, data structures and algorithms, software testing, and overall quality. These criteria are back-end oriented. I picked them because we already covered a lot of front-end content in the first half of the course. So at the end, I will share which path is best from a senior developer's perspective. Before we start, I want to share something my friend and I are working on. We're working on JobSimulator, a project to break down the barriers to professional software engineering. To do this, we are building free, open-source projects designed to give you the real-world experience of what a software job is like. Our projects have real-world issues and feature requests, just like at a real coding job. It's up to you to fix these issues and get the codebase in a working state. If you need help with the projects, we have a dedicated Discord community where we help each other out with the exercises. If you're interested, I'd love to see you there. Check out our webpage and join our Discord community with the link in the description. Alright, back to the Odin project. Let's start with databases. The big difference between the two paths is that the Rails path teaches you relational databases, while the full stack JS path covers a NoSQL database called MongoDB. I understand why the Odin project chose a NoSQL database for the full stack path. MongoDB has a very low learning curve and it's used in the popular MERN stack. That said, I think beginners should start with a relational database. Relational databases are more common in the workplace, and they're generally a good default when starting to build a web application. Luckily, the Rails path has good coverage of relational databases. A lot of the content is handwritten by the Odin Project's maintainers. In it, they cover things like clauses, statements, functions, and general SQL best practices. The resources they provide are also fantastic, SQL Zoo being one of them. If you want another interactive free resource for practicing SQL, I recommend SelectStarSQL.com. Just like SQL Zoo, SelectStar SQL is interactive and uses a real-world dataset to teach you the ins and outs of SQL. Another tool I recommend is a database GUI. It's basically a tool to visually interact with and manage your database. Since I tend to use Postgres for most of my web apps, I am a fan of pgadmin. I'll provide a link with some other database GUI options in the description below. For me, the Rails path has better coverage of databases. This is because I prefer relational databases as a sane default for web apps. With them, it's easy to maintain high data quality standards since they enforce a schema when interacting with tables. They're also more common in professional settings than their NoSQL alternatives, and you can see that very clearly in Stack Overflow's developer survey from last year. Next up, data structures and algorithms. In the last video, I mentioned slight disappointment in the fact that DSA wasn't covered in the first half of the Odin project. Turns out I was wrong. DSA is covered, but it's only covered in the Ruby track. It's not included in the full stack JS path, but I heard from some users that a general DSA course is in the works. DSA is a very useful skill to learn both in terms of practical day-to-day programming, but also in terms of employment. Lots of job interviews will quiz you on this stuff, and knowledge of it will help you get past those technical interviews. If you're looking for a resource on DSA, I recommend a book called Cracking the Coding Interview. The book does a good job of quickly introducing you to DSA. If you're eager to get started, skip all the stuff at the beginning and start with section 9 of the book. The data structures chapters will set you up with a good practical foundation, and the algorithms chapters that come right after will help you learn how to write code with DSA in mind. For me, the Rails course wins in the DSA category. This doesn't feel like a fair comparison, but I hope the team puts out some DSA content for the JS path soon. The next topic is testing. Testing is a weak spot for many junior developers. Both paths cover unit testing with RSpec for Ruby and Jest for JavaScript. More advanced testing was covered in the Node course, in my opinion. They have you writing integration tests against your routes in the controllers via SuperAgent and SuperTest, and they even set you up with a local testing database using MongoDB memory server. Testing your application against a local database is ideal. It simulates your app's production architecture without having to actually connect to an externally hosted database. In the workplace, I've come across apps whose CI/CD pipelines would break because our externally hosted database couldn't be reached. It's in times like these where a local database is very helpful. Instead of hitting a remote database, you simply spin up a local database and use it to run your app. No internet connection required. Exposure to these advanced approaches to testing helps turn juniors into senior developers. Sadly, there was no coverage of integration tests in the Rails path. If you want more Rails testing resources, I recommend the GoRails video on end-to-end testing. In it, they test the high-level features of their application using automated browser tests. It's worth a look, and it's entirely free. Another resource is the ever-gracious Rails guides. They have coverage on integration tests, controller tests, and route tests as well. If you want a good resource on how to think about software testing in general, check out the Write Tests blog post by Kent C. Dodds. The TLDR is to write tests, not too many, and mostly integration. I think this is a practical and productive approach to testing, and I urge you to give it a quick read. It captures my general philosophy on software testing as a whole. The lack of integration and end-to-end tests in the Rails path means the full stack JS wins the testing round in my book. We're now at the final category, which is content quality. To assess quality, we will focus on depth and breadth of the two paths as far as full stack web development is concerned. Let's start with the Rails path. They covered the basics as well as the advanced bells and whistles of Ruby, from printing hello world to things I wasn't even familiar with, like procs, pattern matching, and polymorphic associations. It was obvious they weren't shying away from intermediate content, and the quality was fantastic. They were also thorough in their Rails coverage. They cover things like Turbo, Stimulus, OAuth 2, mailers, WebSockets, consuming third-party APIs, and much, much more. It's quite astounding how deep the course maintainers went in the Rails path. I say it often, but the depth and attention to detail makes it hard to believe that this course is free. The Node course teaches you CRUD and MVC with Express and Pug. You'll learn all about REST, middlewares, authentication, and MongoDB. Most of the content is outsourced to the MDN guides. The Node course was not as deep as they didn't introduce you to third-party APIs, WebSockets, or OAuth 2. All of which are covered in the Rails section. I also didn't think that the Node curriculum reflected most of what I've seen in my professional career. Most full-stack JavaScript involves a React or Angular front-end, an Express back-end, and a relational database. If you're feeling fancy, you may even throw in some TypeScript into the mix, as it's gained popularity in the last couple of years. It would be nice to see the curriculum adopt a JS stack that's as rich and as up-to-date as the one covered in the Rails section of the course. If you're interested in a Rails-like framework for full-stack JavaScript, there are some newcomers to the scene, the most popular being Redwood.js. It's a batteries-included framework that gives you React, GraphQL, TypeScript, and much more. If you like Rails and want to try something like it in the JavaScript ecosystem, give it a spin. Just know that it's fairly new, so your mileage may vary. As far as quality is concerned, I felt that the Rails path was deeper and broader in coverage than the JavaScript one. I also felt that the instructors created more of the content for the Rails path themselves, while outsourcing most of the full-stack JavaScript content to the MDN guides. For me, the Rails path wins in terms of quality. That just about wraps up my comparison of the two tracks. If we tally up our scores, we'll see that the Rails path wins my vote. A good question to ask right now is, why are the two paths so different? My guess is the difference is due to the fact that teaching full-stack JavaScript is much harder than teaching Rails. It's very tricky to teach people full-stack JavaScript since there are so many combinations of packages to choose from. This problem is worsened by the fact that some packages are trendy one year and forgotten the next. To deal with this, the JS curriculum had a narrow, tight focus on a small collection of packages. This limits the risk of any packages they teach to go out of fashion. One of the downsides of this approach is that in doing so, they cover much less ground than the Rails path. I felt that the Rails track was much more rigorous and covered more ground. This is due to the fact that Rails is a well-defined bundle of stable technologies. Because of its cohesion and high content quality, I think the Rails path would produce more productive and better prepared web developers than the full-stack JavaScript path. If forced to pick between the two, I would encourage the full-stack Rails path. That said, the two paths share a lot of knowledge. This makes it easy for someone who has done one track to go back and try the other, which I highly encourage. The more you're exposed to, the stronger of a developer you will become. So there you have it. Let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments below, and as always, if you like what you saw, please leave a like and subscribe for more videos. Thanks for watching Web Dev with Seb.